at our second meeting of the TV Highway Transit and Safety Project Policy and Budget Committee. I want to thank you for being here also. I apologize about my lateness as we move forward. The project is stronger as a result of the hard work that we do here in this room and the care you take to study and prepare for these meetings. So thank you. Also want to thank the City of Hillsborough for hosting us today. So let's start off with a round of introductions. So we'll start with Councilor Salgado from Hillsborough, and then we'll go around the room.
Good evening, Christian Salgado, City of Hillsborough City Councilor.
Jerry Wilding, Washington County Commissioner of District 4.
Jeff Delane, Mayor of Cornelius.
Metro Councilor for District 4, Juan Carlos Gonzalez.
Ana Dion Johnson, I use they, them pronouns, Chair of the committee, the Community Advocacy Committee.
And we'll go online. Members on Zoom.
This is Councilor Hartmeyer Prigg from Beaverton. I use she, her pronouns.
And Chris.
Chris Ford, Policy and Development Manager for ODOT Region 1.
Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. I also want to thank the staff from all of our partner jurisdictions who are supporting this project. The staff from Metro, ODOT, Washington County, Hillsborough, Beaverton, Cornelius, Forest Grove, and of course, TriMet have spent a lot of time together since we last met, digging into the information we started to discuss at the last meeting. I know their work together is helping not only give you the information you need, but also answering the many questions that our riders and communities have about how this project will bring the safety and transit improvements that this corridor needs. So could all staff that's out, could you just raise your hand just so that we can thank you? Thank you so much. All right, we'll get started here as we move forward into our agenda, and also we'll go directly into looking at reflections on the Line 57, public comment, our community affairs update, and vehicle propulsion discussion, and also the project schedule and budget. So when we were together last, Ana Diana asked about our personal experiences with the Line 57, and I just want to share what I know and hear from each of you. What I do know is that when you are riding, you see people out the window standing next to a pole without weather protection, often on a patch of asphalt, without safe crossings. I know that the railroad tracks are a mere few feet from a number of existing stops. I know that there's poor lighting, which leads to riders being passed up at night, and riders frequently dash across the highway in an unmarked intersection to catch their bus. Also know that we have many dedicated bus operators who know where to look for riders who are waiting in the dark and who are trained to look for folks who are running for their bus or taking a risk to make their connection. So most of the day, there's a seat for everyone that wants or needs one, but I do know that more frequent and reliability means a lot to riders and will reduce pass-ups for people in mobility devices along the corridor. So I would like to just kind of open it up to the committee. Would anyone like to share what they know about riding the Line 57?
Yeah, thank you, Sam. I'll be happy to do that. Pardon me? Okay. Yeah, a few weeks ago, Washington County staff, there was 4 of us and myself, got on Max here in Hillsborough, rode Max to Beaverton Town Center, and then got on 57 and rode back to Forest Grove. We intentionally did not do it during rush hour. We had some scheduling issues with that, but we also wanted to just, I think, test the system out under normal conditions. So Jessica wrote up a little bit of notes here that I'll read and then add some more to it. We rode midday. We had a pretty smooth and quick ride overall. We had a little minor mechanical issue here, but the guy came on, fixed it, made the bus late, and so the bus was passing by some of the stops as we headed out of Hillsborough, and I'm assuming no one at the stops seemed to be unhappy, so they must have known that there must have been a sign or something on the front that indicated that we were behind and that there was another one coming right behind us. So I'm assuming that they kind of got stacked up at that point in time. We noticed that there was plenty of seating available, but whenever a mobility device or someone with a basket came on, it definitely consumed a lot of the space in the front part of the bus. So it was good that there wasn't a lot of people at that point in time, because I think we would have filled up fairly rapidly. The bus driver was very efficient. It went faster than what I anticipated, but we did notice that we didn't have anyone get on with the bicycle, so that also, speeded things up a little bit. But we did, I was just, I guess it was an educational experience for me just to be on the bus and see, it was kind of limited, and certainly if we had mobility devices, it felt very constrained as far as the number of people we could get on the bus. Now, I didn't look at the back half to see how many seats there were, but it did feel much more constrained when we had mobility devices and they would pop up the seats in the front part of it and allow for that. So, but other than that, it was good. I'm happy that I did that, and I certainly appreciate the Washington County staff that joined me, and we learned things as we headed up TV Highway, and we saw some development and the condition of many of the stops, and so it was good. It was a good investment of time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for the information as well. Any other committee members? Counselor.
Well, my experience began at home walking about 30 minutes to the transit line, and having heard from a number of residents that live near the intersection of Highway 47 and 8 specifically went to that intersection. It is quite intimidating for pedestrian if you're crossing there and getting on the eastbound bus line. Once you get to the stop, it's ease of use from there. Getting on and paying the fare and activating things is ease of use. It's the pedestrian experience to the stop that I think is most intimidating and concerning for many.
Thank you. Counselor.
Yeah, thank you, Sam, and really appreciate the opportunity for all of us to have a dedicated moment to experience it with a focus on this project. I've ridden TV Highway many times, but recently rode, I think y'all know, outside of my work at Metro, I work for a local community-based organization that has multiple offices along TV Highway. So I rode Line 57 from our Hillsborough office to our Cornelius office. And I think something that just always amazes me about this part of the region, especially between Hillsborough and Cornelius, is just the lack of sidewalks and bike infrastructure, really almost impossible to traverse as a non-vehicle driver, especially as you're going over, I think it's Dairy Creek. And I just think that is not the kind of regional infrastructure that I think Oregonians deserve or want. And I think about how this project is so important to advance that. And another really important reflection that I love anytime I'm on public transit is you just see people from all walks of life. every background. My friend JT, who's on the TriMet board, he talks about how it's like rich folk, broke folk, working folk from all walks of life on the bus. And I think right now, especially as, I think there's a lot of isolation and loneliness in our community and our society, creating those public spaces where the commons, where we come together and remind ourselves of our humanity and our relationship with each other. It just lit a fire in me, Sam, and it reminded me too of how with TriMet's $300 million shortfall, how many people across the region are going to lose bus service, lose bus lines entirely, lose frequency, and how that is just so contrary to what I think our values are as a region. So those things really have come up to me a lot, and I just appreciate the opportunity to report back to the group.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Those economic challenges that we're having throughout, I think all government organizations are dealing with that, but really appreciate you calling that out. And anyone else, any other feedback?
Okay, there we go. Yeah. Let's see, since our last meeting, twice a week at least, I'm on the line 57. And as I pointed out to someone a little earlier, one of the problems with the small space for the mobility devices is everybody uses it. That's the first people land. Well, actually, I didn't mention that earlier, but that's the first place people land when they get on the bus. And many of them are loath to move for someone in a mobility device. And we need to provide better education, I think, to our travelers, and courtesy training and stuff comes to mind. But anyway, and so two people with mobility devices can't go someplace together. I can't say to a friend, hey, let's go have some lunch, unless, of course, it's within driving distance for both of us without getting on transit. And one of my concerns is all the people that are going to the bottle drop in Forest Grove. They got these huge bags and things. Anyway, so everybody who needs to uses that bus line. And the other place where I think our travelers need a little bit of training is the hop card and how they can save money. There are so many people out on this end of the world who pay with cash. And when I see it, and if I have a chance to, and they're not just Spanish speakers, because I don't speak Spanish, I'll explain the hop card to them, and how they can save themselves some money. And I think we need to get, it's been 10 years that those have been out. Almost, since I was part of the pilot for it, so for me it's been 10 years. But we need to do a reintroduction so that people understand. Anyway, yeah, it's where I live on the line 57.
And really thank you for your dedication and really going out and riding with us on that. Really appreciate it. Councilor Hartmeyer-Prague.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. My ridership on 57 is actually usually going eastbound because I'll take the train, or I'll take the bus into Thorns Games from where I live. So I do need to take a westbound ride because I'm at the eastern end of Beaverton. However, one thing I think when we talk about, we want people to be able to choose transit and having transit be that, that kind of first choice that's convenient and whatnot. I noticed that line 57 is one that it stops running pretty early, and especially on the weekends. It ends, I think, by 7. So I think that we have to also kind of just I'm sure there's ridership reasons, right, that maybe the demand is not there. But if you're thinking of it in the whole system and what we want to be able to use the system for, I just kind of think about the time that the rides are offered.
Yeah, appreciate that, and we've definitely taken notes of that. I'm looking at staff right now. So really thank you all for that conversation, and I know that your team has heard your concerns, and we'll be thinking about how to keep them top of mind through design as we move through it. So now, for public comment. So Nick, I know that we have someone that signed up, so I'll turn it over to you.
Hello there. We actually don't have anyone that signed up for public comment, but we do have one piece of public comment that I passed out to you all and handed out. So if you want to review that, and it is there for you to see.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will go ahead then and move forward. Now, I'm going to invite Community Affairs Coordinator Nick Whitcomb to provide an update on the engagement work. Yes, Councilor.
Sorry, General Manager Desu, just want to make sure, I know that we received testimony from Hillsborough Councilor Kipperlin Sinclair, who's here in person. So I just want to make sure that if you would like to give testimony on the record as well, you have the opportunity to do so. But I appreciate your call to action, Councilor.
Totally. Yeah.
Sorry, Sam. I saw.
Thanks,
it.
Councilor. Really appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks for naming that. I went in and checked in with her when she came in to make sure we were good, and she said that she's happy for you all to have it to review, but if you...
I did it.
You're going to do it?
Now we put him on the spot, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, here she comes. She's coming.
Good evening. How are you all doing today? Early evening. In further reviewing and being briefed as an alternate to the committee, I think with the discrepancies of where we're at in the project and the need that we still have in being over budget. Should I identify myself? I did not identify myself. Please excuse myself.
Thank you.
My name is Kipperlin Sinclair. I'm a Hillsborough City Councilor and alternate here to the committee. And I think it'd be well worth if we, as an entire team, with alternates included, visit the Merlot Carriage House as well as the Beaverton Transit Center so that we can see and fully understand where the project's currently at with the monies that have already been spent and the direction we're now setting to go forth. I think that there's a missed opportunity to have a complete understanding if we do not visit on site. So I hope you'll consider, and I think that that'd be very meaningful for our community so we can give them a complete project at the best value possible.
Well taken. Thank you, and I'll make sure that we talk as a committee and also with the project team to see if we can get that scheduled.
Thank you.
Okay, Nick, why don't you go ahead and come back up. Nick's going to provide us an update on engagement, on the engagement work that has taken place since our first meeting. So with that, Nick, I'll turn it over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Sam. Hello, Nick Whitcomb, Community Affairs Coordinator working on this project. So good to see you all again. You can go to the next slide. So we've done a lot of really great work. Some of it has been with you all, so thank you for taking the time that you've had to have conversations with us, continue to learn about this project as we go forward and prepare for today. But we're also, as we head into 30% design, we are going to be looking to increase our engagement with the community. There was a lot of engagement done by Metro in the planning phase, and we're going to re-engage folks, re-socialize the project so that folks know where we're at and can kind of know what's coming to their neighborhood. So we are working on finalizing our stakeholder maps. We have individual maps for each jurisdiction that we've been working on, and then also a more broader one that covers Washington County as well as the state, so we can really understand who are the folks that might be interested in hearing about this project and knowing what's going on. And then we're also going to be looking to do some project updates to key groups starting in late spring or early summer. I'm convening your engagement staff from across all the jurisdictions in May so that we can have a meeting with them to really see where are the places that they think it might be best for us to show up. It's a really long corridor, as you know, and so not trying to do a one-size-fits-all engagement. We're really digging into each of the spaces and seeing where are the places, who are the groups that might be interested in hearing about what we've got going on. We're also going to be leaning into our Community Advisory Committee. We have another meeting with them in May, and we have a lot of great CBO partners and community members on that group that are going to also help us figure out what spaces they see us coming in, either places they're connected to or folks that might be already asking. We have really great members that have already started bringing some of that stuff up. So really excited about the team that we have to, and I include the Community Advisory Committee as a part of that, to really help us engage with folks on this project. And then we're exploring options for what open houses will look like. There are a lot of things to celebrate on this project and things to talk about, also some challenges, some that we've talked about here as a group, and we're just trying to figure out what are the opportunities to really go out into the community and share about the work that we're doing with folks. We did write a newsletter that went out to over 60,000 writers and subscribers of TriMet. So that's really great. We've been getting some engagement from folks in many directions, as you can imagine when you put something in the world. But what that tells me is that our message is reaching folks. So I'm mostly just excited that we're finally, putting the project out there in a way where community members are able to engage with us and tell us what they think, and so that we can have that as part of our conversation. I'm now going to pass the mic over to our Community Advisory Committee Chair, Anadiana Johnson, and they will provide you with an update on what we've been doing in that group for the last month.
Thank you, Nick. Let's see. Excuse me. So our Community Advisory Committee met on the 16th, and we recapped what had happened at the last Planning Committee meeting. And we talked about what our visioning themes might be. We talked about needing safety and accessibility, reliability, community understanding and perspective on the project as it's being developed and implemented. Support WISE solutions. Okay, well, getting input is going to help us get better ideas. So I guess that's what that is, to have the wisdom behind the solution that we come up with. Representing community needs. That there's different needs in different sections of the community all along TV Highway. And multimodal considerations. As was pointed out, we don't have decent bike lanes even, let alone multimodal transportation. And multimodal traffic lane is going to be one of my future endeavors. Anyway, so we talked about what our visioning was and shared the visioning map that was created by this committee. And we, excuse me, so the primary things are safety for riders, community connection, WISE solutions, and representation and inclusion. And for community outreach, farmers markets. Don't forget farmers markets. I love farmers markets. And so then when we talked about the vehicle selection, we had a little bit of a discussion about whether or not the 40-footers would possibly work. And after long talks, we got agreement that with reconfiguration of the interior and less dwell time in between the buses, the 40-footers could probably work if it's done right. So, and we're just going to keep advocating for the 3 mobility spaces because I think that would make a big difference. Even if one of them's in the back of the bus, if we're doing near-level boarding, people can get in and out there. I think that would be a reasonable thing to do. And we don't have any specific concerns about the fuel type. So back to you, Nick.
Thank you so much, Anadiana. And yeah, that's all we've got unless there are any questions from you all.
Nick and Anadiana, thank you for the presentations. Are there any questions about the outreach plans or our Community Advisory Committee? Okay, I see no questions. Thank you, Nick. Yep.
I do have a question, sorry.
Counselor.
You know me, I'm chatty, curious, genuinely inquisitive. So I remember in the last phase of the project, Unite Oregon worked on a community logo project where kids from different schools in the community put together a logo, and I remember attending a session. We were there together hanging out. It was awesome with community. And And I'm wondering, are we going to use that as like going forward? What are the thoughts around that? I thought that was such a meaningful process.
No, that's a really good question. I definitely shared the logo with our team and was like, it's so exciting because it also kind of mirrors our logo, which was, our logo wasn't out at the time that the student drew it, so it was actually really cool to see that what we came up with TriMet and what that student came up with were in line. But I can take that back and see kind of how we feel. One thing I do know about that group is that unfortunately, because of funding, they are kind of on a pause right now with the TV Highway Equity Coalition. And so that would be a great way to kind of celebrate that work. It was a really exciting moment. I'm happy we got to be in that room together and celebrate that. So, but yeah, I'll take it back and see if there might be some spaces we could use that in the way when we go forward.
All right, thank you, Nick.
Great question. Great follow-up. Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. Now I would turn the presentation to TV Highway Project Director Josh Brennan, who will finish out the vehicle selection discussion.
Thank you, Sam. Turn over the mic to me. Good evening, all of you all. Thank you all for being here and participating in this process with us, coming along for the ride as we want to really get on board and start delivering this project for this region. We didn't get to propulsion in the last meeting. We spent a good deal of time talking about vehicle length and things about the challenges for Merlot related to that. So we wanted to kind of take a step back and make sure that we kind of had another, round of discussion and let some folks have some comments back to us on that topic. In the early planning phase, we identified, I would say, I was before my time with some other folks that had been working on the project, a smaller team. Again, Metro leading also the planning phase, and a lot of thanks to them to getting it to the phase where TriMet gets the handoff and we work on the delivery phase for the project. Since then, we have seen and found out some things about 60-foot vehicles and BEBs in general, whether they're 60-foot or 40-foot, of what they can provide, or what are the challenges for TriMet to be able to operate those vehicles. And I think we did a fairly in-depth discussion again about the 60-foot. When we look at some of the ridership figures that we presented last time, again, heard the testimony today about the way the bus feels from you, Commissioner Willie, and definitely noted that. But, with trying to kind of continue that conversation forward about what the 40-foot bus can do, again, with the additional bus, the 12-minute headways, we get one more bus per hour, trying to stress that we feel like the 40-foot diesel bus can do what it needs to do for providing the level of service that TriMet hopes to bring to the community and serve this corridor. I'd like to point out a couple things as they're up here on the slide. We know that BEBs carry a significant extra cost to the project for the initial capital investment. That's approximately about 60% more, and that translates to about a $600,000 to $700,000 difference between the two propulsion types per vehicle. And want to note that something we didn't probably get to say last time about R99 as a technology is the fact that R99 has demonstrated and proven itself to be able to reduce our carbon footprint and our goals by about 60% alone. And these are things that date back to TriMet's ZEB policy, all those things that have gone on since the 2018, 2019 period where TriMet was moving into this realm. So I'd just like to start off with that. Can I, next slide, please? Before I kind of hit on these particular bullets at the top here, the bubble diagram, I just also wanted to say that, you know, having 40-foot R99 vehicles at Merlot, we can do what we've done for decades out there with delivering using 40-foot vehicles, diesel vehicles, to give the service that the area needs. And we don't foresee a lot of significant investment. I think that's why we're here, again, pointing to some of these things. The difference between the two technologies is the fact that the R99 vehicle, we can do this maintenance. We don't have to go and make significant investments in Merlot to be able to do that. I think there would be some small investments needed so that we could keep this dedicated fleet of BRT type vehicles on the streets. You know, we're talking like maybe a couple of bays, or configure them to actually hold and be dedicated to serving that fleet. So it's going out repeatedly every day, more reliable. So things like that on that scale, that the project would be able to cover that type of expense. What we're trying to here to show on this slide is the 5 criteria that we're trying to bring, or say is that we're trying to measure about what this service is going to bring to the region. And the criteria of comparing these two technologies basically is a summary of where quality of service, current and future ridership, feasible within the operational constraints, trying to deal with the funding gap that we're facing as well, and the way that certain technologies in the eyes of the feds relative to our readiness and our funding commitments. Again, the delta and the gap, if we can close that gap with what means that we can find, we're trying to do that so we can demonstrate our funding readiness to the FTA. I would say that in addition to that, that R99 really gets us to that place. And as you can see here, there's a couple of the bubbles that stay unfilled just because of what R99 can do versus what BEB can't do. And we're just trying to put that in front of you all to consider how, even though we end up with this concept of where we don't get the ZEB vehicle, that we can still meet the goals of the project and serve the community in the corridor in an effective manner and provide that level of service. I would like to just kind of hit on a couple of these points with, like, in terms of probably hitting on point 3, feasible within the operational constraints. What that's trying to basically say, again, what does Merlot have and what does Merlot not have right now? And what we've gone through with the team and seen and demonstrated and gone out and talked to the maintenance folks is that we have those challenges with any sort of BEB type fleet out there. We do, of course, have some vehicles that are running out of there. But to have an additional 17 vehicles, again, a very dedicated fleet of one type of propulsion to this corridor would be extremely challenging. And we discovered all these things post-planning and into the 15% design and doing some investigations with a larger team that we now have in the delivery phase. For the funding gap, I would just like to kind of stress the fact that we've had these conversations with the bus manufacturers, and we've seen that we will see some savings of, like I mentioned, $600,000 to $700,000 per vehicle. That works us towards closing that particular gap. Funding commitments in terms for demonstrating readiness to the feds, I kind of touched on that a little bit. Again, the lower cost, closing the gap, the things that we're trying to show for our upcoming, and Michael will delve into that a lot further on the funding discussion. is like we have these deadlines to meet to get into the FTA's queue so that we can stay on track to deliver this project in 2030 and avoid a lot of additional escalation costs year over year. In terms of a readiness, you could say, we could also say to the feds that if we're buying diesel buses, it's a proven technology. TriMet, again, as a long-standing deliverer of transit service by bus using diesel buses, knows that we can accommodate and basically show to the feds that we can put a fleet of vehicles out there that can provide safe and reliable service for the community. Next slide, please. So with a comparison here of the R99 versus 40-foot buses, again, I'm going to kind of be reiterating a couple of the same types of dollar figures and things, but what I'm trying to show here is that we looked at a couple different scenarios of what we could do since we last met. And we had started this before we met, but it wasn't fully baked, and looking at other options. And some of the things we looked at was, can we run this fleet out of a different bus base? And what you see here presented is the fact that in the scenarios of 40-foot R99 Merlot base versus the BEB out of Powell, is that we just see so much additional deadheading costs that are in the first column in terms of operating costs, and the inefficiencies that bringing vehicles over from Merlot, that's even more deadheading just for the sake of bringing them over for maintenance, but the deadheading costs out in the morning for service generates an additional need for 6 more buses. So between those two things, that's what we're trying to show, is the capital cost is a combination of those additional, the delta between the 2 vehicle types and the 6 additional vehicles that you would have to supply, and making and finishing and completing the investments that we have been making at Powell itself to serve its existing fleet as it is right now. In terms of size, TriMet completed its last round of purchases of BEBs. I think it was in 2024. And for right now, with service cuts and things like that, we have put ourselves in a position where, unless we're doing a new type of line for BRT, that we're not really seeing the need for additional vehicles. And so we've kind of put the pause on those additional investments in more BEBs, because we want to actually see how the technology evolves over time and improves, so that when TriMet is ready and the need is there in terms of ridership recovery or service expansion, that we're able to then invest at that time. And as we all know, we've discussed that all the agencies around here, including TriMet, are facing significant financial challenges. Let's see. Next slide, please. Going to kind of take you back and try to tie this into, I am really wanting to turn this over. Obviously, we'll have a pause here for some questions, but I want to, give a lot more time for you all to really hear about the funding challenges. I know that's what when we left, as we met last time, that was something that we were going to definitely bring to this forum this month and really try to take a deeper dive on that. What I'm trying to say here with this slide is that we can still provide the safety, the ridership experience at stations, and the transit speed and reliability with this project, even with an R99 type vehicle, because the purpose and need is met by the 5 criteria that I mentioned earlier. Where either type of propulsion can provide that same type of experience and meet those criteria as well. So with that, I will hand it back over to Sam, or unless anybody has any questions.
Please.
Hi, this is Anna Diana. My question is around maintenance. I know that I personally had to be offloaded from 2 buses the first 3 months of this year, between January and mid-March, actually, because of mechanical problems. And I know that TriMet not too long ago went through a problem with not enough mechanics to maintain all the equipment. And so how does that weigh out with this comparison you're doing with the initial, because it's not going to be the initial costs only. It's ongoing costs as well. And do you have any information about the maintenance and what difference that would make to the cost?
I can't speak to the level of maintenance employees that we have or how that ebbs and flows, but I could speak to you about something I definitely heard from the maintenance management staff, is that when we bring in these other types of propulsion technologies, they actually end up, so people get specialized, right? And they get a training to be like, some point there might be hydrogen on another line. Or for BEBs currently is where we have some, is like there's certain employees get trained in that realm. But what happens is some people call in sick. That person then gets pushed over into a diesel realm because, they started out as a diesel mechanic or something like that. And then, so that takes away, there's like these things that shift around. So as we are not so standardized with some of these technologies, it can be really challenging, I think, for our maintenance staff to be able to keep up. But in terms of, your experience, I don't think I'm the one to be able to speak to that very well and how TriMet is really addressing that, unfortunately.
Thank you for that. My question was in regards to the different technologies and bringing them in and a long-term expense. And so you got there. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner?
Yeah.
Oh, Counselor.
Oh, thank you for the presentation. My question is for you, Sam. Can you just remind us what the authority of this committee is? Because this is being presented to us like the decision has already been made and they're moving forward with it. So is our authority on deciding whether we move forward with this decision, or can you just help me understand that a little bit more?
Yes, so the authority of the committee is for you to provide feedback to me as a general manager of the organization, and then we'll make the decision about what goes forward.
Okay, so we're not the deciding factor. Okay,
Correct.
thank you. I do have a couple of questions. So I heard the number, the 40-foot buses, there would be 17 of the buses, right? How many originally were planned for the project of the 60-foot buses?
It was going to be the same.
So it was going to be 17 60-foot buses, and now it's 17 40-foot buses.
17, that is correct. So that's 15 with 2 spares. I understand your question is what that's perceived as a capacity difference, right? I mean, that's true. But, again, we were able to present some numbers. I know that that's based upon ridership figures that are collected by our different business groups, analyst groups, service planning, and we look at those numbers, and we were able to point out during those peak periods and things like that, that we didn't see that particular threat to being over capacity, especially if you were doing the extra bus per hour. But again, I've really heard, I think everybody heard, what it feels like versus what numbers say when you're considering that, you have to consider the seating plus the standing space only. And I get it. I ride the bus as well, the 75, and there are periods where, the standing and the sitting do feel, it does feel full, even if not every seat might be taken.
Yeah, for a little over a year, I actually rode Line 57 from Beaverton around the Murray area all the way out here to Community Action because I worked there for about a year. So it was about an hour and a half ride each way. And so little things like the bus getting delayed, those are real, they impact the riders. There's real impact, right? I remember getting written up at Community Action for being late one time because the bus broke down and I was late 30 minutes. And it was a whole thing, right? So there's real impacts to not having a functioning system and a reliable system. We're investing nearly $300 million in this project, and I feel like when there's that amount of money, given the budget situation across the state and the federal government, I think we need to scrutinize these things, especially when there's shifts in the direction of them, because, you know, I ask questions of like, well, the whole purpose of it was to increase the capacity, the reliability, and the speed. And it seems like, you know, this project, you know, we have that $56 million funding gap, and I'm really questioning, like, do we really need the 17 buses if they're not going to be the buses that were originally planned? Because they were going to fulfill a specific need, right, those buses. And so now we're going to replace them with 40-foot buses that are not actually going to increase that capacity, and that's actually going to be more expensive to operate from the vantage point that I have, right, because I'm seeing more increased operation, right? So that's more operating costs than the other buses because you're increasing the amount of times that you're riding it. So that's more staff time, more gas, right? More time on the road for more buses. And so I want to just share those things out loud and open because I think we have to be really careful about how we move forward with this. And I don't think it's a slam dunk for me that, you know, we go with the 40-foot buses. Like I said, number one issue for me and what I'm hearing from the community is quality of, you know, what happens when they're waiting for the bus, right? Are they safe? Are they away from traffic? Is there lighting? Is there communication around when the buses come in? Is it late? Is it broken down? You know, should you call your work and tell them you're going to be late? Those are the sort of things. We want safety, right? We want people to stop getting ran over crossing TV Highway. And for me, we accomplished that without the buses, and we ended up saving quite a bit of money, right? So I just want to share those out loud. And I'll probably have more later, but for now, I'll step off the mic and let somebody else talk.
Can I just add quickly to that? We had 17 vehicles before, we have them now, whether you're doing 40 or 60. That's also driven by the frequency, so we're increasing the frequency. So a lot of that is tied to the frequency, not just the capacity piece. So we are creating more capacity through higher frequency and need that number of buses to maintain that frequency. Even though these are R99 40-foot buses, we're also looking at having ramp deployment at the back door as well as the front door, and having a wider door to allow people to get off and on quickly, because dwell time is a huge cost saver on lines like this.
Yeah.
So just some additional factors to consider.
Yeah, and
the
I
suggestion
understand.
is not to remove shelters or amenities or safety elements.
Yeah.
We'd rather take some cuts here than in those infrastructure investments that really will matter
I mean,
to the community.
my comments read more on the project costs and trying to constrain and control some of those. I understand. I mean, that's why I addressed, I think, yeah, more rapid buses, right, means more staff time. So you're doubling up the salary. You're doubling up the gas cost. So, you know, you're making a decision that's going to increase the operating cost. At the same time, we're having discussions around cutting lines of service, right? So we're shifting the project to have a longer cost to operate, and it kind of goes counterintuitive to the situation that we're currently seeing. So it's like we're removing bus lines, but we're going to add 17 buses. So that's the last thing I'll say, and my mouth is getting dry, so I'm going to stop talking.
Thanks, Councilor. And Michael, you should just introduce yourself to the panel as well.
Yep, sorry, I'm about to do my side of the presentation, but Michael Kaiser, I'm the executive or interim director of major projects that oversees our federal projects at TriMet. Thanks.
Commissioner Willa, did you have anything?
I did. I think Brian's got a couple as well. I'm trying to figure out the difference between the buses we have and the R99s. Because Ana Diana and I spoke briefly before this meeting about the onloading, offloading situation and the capacity situation. And I'm wondering if the R99 is different. Can they load and offload in two locations, front and back? The current bus that we were on could not. If I understand that correctly, they could only tap in on the front. So yeah, could you give me a comparison of the R99s versus the ones we have, and then and from my standpoint, battery is still not an option because we can't maintain it on the west side. So I'm looking at a better designed bus, but knowing it'll have to be diesel.
Understood. Yeah, as Michael mentioned, is the fact that you will have the 2 hop readers, so one at each door. This isn't, the 60-footer has that extra door or whatever, the potential. But the dual tap will speed up the potential to have 2 ramps or, whichever one seems more efficient. We're trying to, like you said, decrease that dwell time. The third mobility device, we end up sacrificing 2 seats. So I think it goes from 38 to 36 seats when you add the third mobility spot instead of has been more of the standard 2. Again, not to pivot back a little bit to Councilor Salgado's, another thing that we're trying to do with the project is, regardless of the bus, is TSP, that hour and a half, we hope we would trim that off, and we're in the process and design of looking and modeling and trying to see what that's going to look like along the corridor with a really great tool like transit signal priority. But between the 2 buses themselves, they're going to feel very much the same, except that you will have a brand new bus to start out of line on opening day, a new fleet. Again, with a lot of we can look at the ways that this would be attended to because they are branded in a certain way. So we do want to, as much as possible, send out that particular vehicle that was bought for that line and have it running every day, since it's a combination of local dollars and the Fed dollars, and the Fed expects us to treat their investments and maintain them and make them dedicated to what we said that we were going to use them for, and not ship them around to other places and use them on other lines and things like that. Michael, do you have anything else to add, the difference between the 2?
I'll just say one thing. We are running R99 renewable diesel in all of our buses today, and these would continue that plan, which is highly efficient. But it's really those nuanced design aspects of the bus that would make it more suitable for this line. 2-door boarding, 2 ramps, more mobility spaces, similar to what a 60-foot would have. So,
Councilor Schirmo.
Thank you. Well, I want to acknowledge the circumstances with the bus from the project side and what Councilor Salgado affirmed for us. So my interest pivots to community affairs and qualifying the context of the quality of service. Just based on what I'm understanding from our community advisory committee is that would not be green. But there's an important context. Your context may be more on the analytics of measuring ridership and such versus personal experiences. So it's how we communicate that to the public, who's going to be express a lot of disappointment. And so I want to make sure, if Nick is listening, that our communication reflects specifically identifies the language behind what is quality, how are you measuring that as measured by, and with respect to what the community advisory group is telling us, there's gives, gets, there's what even the new bus will help close some of that gap, but some of it will still remain. Because I certainly want to be informed of that, so I can explain it to constituents and assist Nick in that public education. But we're going to have to walk folks through a very disappointing message, and we can explain the nature of the data that you're sharing with us tonight and the budget, and but understanding the very explicit context of the quality aspects. From the project standpoint, as well as what we're hearing from the advisory group. And I really want to speak in their language with the community outreach. Thank you.
Thank you. Ana Diana.
Yeah, this is Ana Diana, and I was wondering, okay, there's the 2-door tapping. One of the things that I have observed and mentioned briefly, but probably should talk about more, is the fact that we have a lot of people using cash, and they would have to go through the front door. We also have a lot of people who ride free, and that would probably be going through the back door. And whereas right now, the bus operator has some idea and makes note of someone got on without paying. When that changes, they won't be able to. How do you figure that into the revenue numbers for the future of this line?
I'll just speak from our past experience on Division. Yes, you do have fare evasion. It is challenging all over the system. If we could deliver this service for free, we would love that, but we still need a revenue source. I know that we've seen some upticks on fare officers to help with fare evasion, but some of that is certainly inevitable. I know even on a 40-foot bus where you pay at the front door, it's challenging for operators to get into a confrontation over fare payment. But it will continue, but where there are other approaches that we take to help reduce incident.
When the operator's aware of it, I think there's a button he pushes, so you guys can at least record how many are doing that. But it's yet another reason why I think that hop card training is really important, so that people don't avoid paying fare. But anyway, thanks.
Thank you.
I definitely took that note. We'll come right back to you, Councilor Gonzalez. Councilor Hartmeyer Prague.
Thank you. I do think that especially since we're the budget committee, and I was broken record during steering committee about budget and how we would finance this, I think that the 40-foot R99 buses are our best path forward. And I think knowing that we would only lose 2 seats, but to get one more accessible or mobility spot would be awesome. Ana Diana, about what you said about, 2 folks with mobility devices want to take the bus together. It's just not really possible. So I love that we're kind of meeting that need of our community. And I think because of the increased frequency, I'm not as worried about the capacity, because I think the data shows us, like you said, there is going to be a seat pretty much available throughout the line and the times. But I also think about, in other places I've had the privilege of visiting where public transit is well utilized, people are crammed into that, and so I also think that there's part of this kind of cultural shift of we got to push ourselves for the folks that can stand, that you can use up that space, that, part of a well utilized transit system is we ride it. So I think for me, this, the 40-foot R99 buses makes a lot of sense. I think just it's tens of millions of dollars more to go with the 60-foot BEBs or the retrofitting that would be required at Merlot. That's just really not feasible. To me, I feel confident that this is the right path forward, and it's also the most fiscally sound choice. Ana Diana, you also brought up some great points though about that fare evasion. So I definitely think that's something to consider. But I also think as a budget committee member, I'm kind of looking this more as budget, our role in this to me is more like the guidance of what we should spend on. And then I would maybe defer a bit to TriMet and the incredible operations team on how are we going to kind of adjust operations around the fact that you've got a second spot to enter the bus.
Thank you. Councilor Gonzalez.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, I feel like we've talked at length about the buses, and it definitely feels like the decision is close to being made by the TriMet team here. As much as I want to, also be a passionate advocate for the battery electric buses, I know that they're way more expensive. The technology maybe has not been as productive as we had hoped, and just different hidden costs in terms of maintenance. And I think with this federal environment that has deprioritized electrification, I think the industry is really pulling back from innovation and scaling. So I think there are some system things to think about. And it's disappointing, but I understand where we are, and I think this project, the most important benefits will be the sidewalks, the crosswalks, the better stations, and most importantly, the high frequency that will help riders. So there are two things. I will not stop talking about how, in exchange for the 60-foot buses, I want a Wi-Fi pilot on TV Highway. Like, I know that the planners and the engineers and the finance people are going to be like, oh, a million reasons why it doesn't work, but give us something to be really excited about on the west side. Give us something to be really excited about. So try it for 2 years, 1 year. Find a pilot, and let's see what kind of value it brings to working people, especially if we're able to offer that on transit. So I'm going to ask about it every single meeting, and I pray that it's in our project application to the Federal Transit Administration when we go through. Second is, I think the conversation also around buses is more of a system level conversation for me. And I continue to be concerned, and I want to see a more concrete plan from TriMet about what I feel is this glass ceiling that Washington County and the West Side has for future transit service expansion, future 60-foot buses, different fuel options going forward, and that's the Merlo station, as you know. I know that we have identified, $200 to $300 million worth of capital need, money that the region doesn't have right now, but I would like to see a plan. Is it a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, 15-year plan, 20-year plan? What is the plan for Washington County and the Merlo Garage to get the appropriate level of investment? Because that is a bottleneck of world-class transit service and options for more than 500,000 people that live on this side of the hills. So I think that to me is something that I also, as we're working through this project, this is a question that I'm really going to be tracking closely, Sam. So whatever that you can do, we can do to create a clearer plan. I know the money's not there, but prioritization is important, and I've heard that very loud and clear from this committee. Thanks.
I appreciate that. I have the team currently working on a facilities master plan that they're going to be following up with, and I should be able to share those results pretty soon. But I think, as you stated, we need a full plan, comprehensive plan on the region as a whole. Mayor, you have any comments?
I was just waiting. I figured I'd let other folks talk. Couple questions, couple comments. Sam or staff, as I read, I do a little offline reading and check. They say industry standard is somewhere between 12, 15, or 20 years for a bus. What kind of longevity do we see in our buses? And the reason I ask is, whatever decision we make now, I'm trying to understand how long does that decision carry into the future? Oh, we get another staff member.
Bring in the B team. Alan Leto, I'm the Executive Director of Planning at TriMet. The current minimum life for a bus that is bought with FTA funds is 12 years. Our current expected lifespan for a standard diesel bus is actually 18 years because we've been using them more lightly since the pandemic. Our previous experience was approximately 16 years, and that takes a lot of maintenance and a replacement of an engine halfway through and things like that. But when we're talking about buying a fleet, we are talking about a 12-plus year commitment.
Thank you. That's good, because that gives some context, right, to what's the longevity. Because as you and I have talked, is maybe 60 isn't the today decision, but to what Juan Carlos was bringing up, is that the next, right? Is that when the buses get replaced? We look at it, and there's a plan maybe that says at 12, 16, 18 years, we have a capital plan that leads to 60-foot buses. And maybe by then we have the ridership that also says we need 60-foot buses. So thank you for that. I think we talked, Sam, a little bit about electric reliability. It's a little, and I'm going to use the term that I've seen online, boutique. It isn't the SOP. I mean, people are buying electric buses, but they aren't, the industry's still spending like 3/4 of the new bus purchases are still diesel, right? Or R99, whatever you want to call it, but that's my understanding from reading the literature. Is that kind of what you guys are seeing too?
Yeah, after an initial rush towards battery electric buses, we actually bought battery electric buses in 3 different tranches. The reliability is getting better. The range is getting better, but they are nowhere near comparable to a diesel bus. And as we now are able to run our diesel buses with R99, we have reduced the emissions, especially the greenhouse gas emissions of our standard diesel buses significantly. So the delta between that and having a battery electric bus is much smaller.
So that leads me to another part of the research online. Do you think we're in the horizon, or if it would be further down? Because I'm seeing the blend, the diesel electric buses. So these are buses that run on diesel, our known technology, our mechanics know how to fix them, but they use batteries. So it's the hybrid. Challenge you to walk out the door here and not run into a hybrid Toyota, right? A Camry or a Prius or something, right? That's a technology that seems to be, for cars, we're there. For trains, there's no other answer, right? They're diesel over electric. So where is it for the buses? Is that coming into a point where we could see that maybe as an option for these, or is that a future possibility? Because the number that makes to all our budget eyes glow is an estimated 40% less emissions and $167,000 a year in reduced fuel costs. Well, if you have a bus that lasts 12 years, or it was hybrid, it's almost like it pays for the bus at the end through the fuel savings. So where do you guys see that as an option? Is that just still out in the future too far? Is that when we go to the time we buy buses, maybe? Just trying to understand.
The experience with, well, first of all, hybrids in a car format have been very successful, though there was a learning path to try to get the mix of gas versus electric right, and it took a little while. Our experience, we actually have had 8 hybrid buses bought in 2 different tranches. Both were disappointing in terms of performance. It's not impossible that future ones will be improved, but what we're still seeing is that the benefits doesn't seem to really justify the cost.
So same kind of stuff, reliability and durability, those kind of things. So you're still seeing, it's not a mature technology, and I think that goes to some of the stuff that Diana was bringing up, right? And you were too. When the bus shows up, you want it to keep going all the way to the destination, right? And there's a value in our customer experience, because we keep saying safety, but part of what we're missing is exactly what Sam talked about, is the customer experience leaves a lot to be desired. Standing by a steel pole in the gravel on the side of a road with no bus stop, no dedicated lift, nothing there, is kind of that's where we are today. That's the current reality, right? And getting to where there's a shelter. I mean, when my citizens talk to me, they want a shelter. Out of everything that we talk about here, the first thing they say is they want a shelter, right? They want to be able to be treated in a more human fashion. And to your point in our last meeting, right? Why is the bus stop, that's the big bus stop in Cornelius, so popular? Well, it is the one at Fred Meyer's because it's got a shelter, right? I think that will change some of the ridership. If everybody rides in the future that's riding today, they will ride happier in a shelter. And you could even make them happier if they had Wi-Fi when they were there.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm with you on that one. So I thank you for answering the battery electric thing. It's just that's not ready for prime time yet. Can you talk to me about ramp versus low entry? Why would we do one versus the other? And is that another one of these reliability or accessibility things? Because I think that goes to what Ana Diana was asking about ramps versus low height?
Can you explain the low height?
Or
Just
low
so-
entry, right? Because I've been in other cities where I can walk off the curb into the bus. So no kneeling. The bus doesn't have to kneel, right?
Yeah.
You can just walk in. And we've got that in our Max, right? Our early Max fleet, everything you had to kind of climb up for, or most of the seats versus, so that's what I'm wondering
So,
is as we
yeah.
talk about accessibility and a bus that we're going to have for the next 12 to 18 years, do we want to focus, as we're providing feedback and we're asking questions of our public comment, do we want this low entry versus a staired ramped experience?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I will say is having near level boarding helps for a lot of conditions, but it leaves a huge portion of the population out that really need to roll on. Even with a near level boarding, you're not able to get on with a mobility device. Even parents with strollers, it can be more difficult. So we're trying to, I mean, accessibility is huge for us. Yes, Ana Diana can answer this better than I.
Yeah, this is Ana Diana again. And with the near-level boarding, if they have the bridge plate at that back door, it solves that problem. Okay, the front door would
Yeah.
have the fold-out ramp, I assume, but the 60-foot buses, that center door came with a bridge plate. Yet for Division Street, they didn't put it in because they would have had to remodel the whole downtown area, and it would have been
Yeah.
too expensive. But out 82nd, they're talking about doing near-level boarding with a bridge plate from the center door on the 60-foot. And so I would assume that we could do a bridge plate off that enlarged back door to allow for mobility devices and strollers and shopping carts and all that to go in and out easily.
Yeah, I mean, a bridge plate is just a smaller ramp, right? And they're less versatile as far as change in grade. So there will be some type of ramp on both doors to help easy on and off. And it's going to be much easier if they're loading through the back door, a wider door, and have maybe a direct shot to 3 mobility device spots.
If you were to put 2 in the front and 1 in the back, that would be lovely, because then the people with strollers and shopping carts and things might go to that other door rather than coming in through the front. Because right now, there's congestion in the front because of the tight space through. And when you do have 2 mobility devices, it's really hard sometimes to get other people onto the bus. And so having that other entry, if you put that third space towards the back, I think that for the 40-footers, that'd be fine.
Yep.
So continuing on, so what I'm hearing is ramp, not low entry. Sam, I beat you up on it, so I'll loop back on it for a second. 32 versus 36. Am I get the right numbers on 3 seats versus, or what? Yeah, how many, what are we talking about for seats? Because the reason I ask is, engineer, that's what I do all day. And I know on the Max, we have like flip down seats in those. So is it a this or that, or is it a this and that? So if you put in a mobility spot, can we not have flexible seating like the flip down seats? Or are they incompatible? Because I think that helps us understand if it's a this or that, or this and that in the capability of the bus.
I mean, I'll just say, we haven't started procurement of the buses. Different manufacturers have flexible options that allow those spaces to be used in different ways. So that's something we'll definitely be getting into when we get to that point.
Because I'm a fan of being able to get 2 or 3 on, right? I think that's a great, but also let's be flexible, right?
Agreed.
And then we have to work on our humans, right? That, hey, if somebody gets onto the mobility device, you need to get out of the flex seat and move away. And I don't know, I'm just going to be honest, not everybody can return their grocery cart, so I'm a little concerned about our fellow man's ability to get out of a seat once they've sat down. But So that
Mayor,
thank you.
if I could just respond to that, the bus we rode had flip-down seats, and the bus driver was very good at anticipating as coming up on the station to see if there's mobility devices to jump up and put those seats up and provide space for them. But there was also no one in there at that point in time. I didn't see anyone refusing to move, but again, there wasn't a lot of demand for that. But they did have the flip-up buses or flip-up seats, and the bus driver was very good about managing those.
So as I work down my list here, going around what you and I talked about, Sam, I think we don't need our own bus. And I'll say that again. We don't need our own bus. We need to buy a bus like somebody else has. I don't care if it's Seattle, San Francisco, Colorado. And this is what you and I talked about, Sam, after the other meeting. You really got to help me understand why we need to design our own bus. There's thousands of buses being bought every year. And why wouldn't we have a bus that has a common motor configuration and chassis configuration to something else, right? So that parts availability, because I know that's something we've struggled with in the past, right? Is we buy this bus, we design this great bus, and we're the only one that picked that design or that manufacturer, and then now we're limited on parts. And I use an old adage, but I can probably walk into any parts store in any small town and find parts for a small block Chevy. I think there's and anybody that's worked on those knows how to work on one of those, right? And I think maybe we need to look at that as part of our idea about the bus. It's great to have the coolest, newest bus, but how about if we have one that has good parts availability and reasonably, if more people are buying parts for the bus, then maybe we can get a better price on the bus. Maybe if we're buying in unison with a bigger city, maybe we get a better price on the bus because we can buy into a larger common contract. So I think those are opportunities for looking at that point.
And that is the R99. I mean, it is a diesel engine that our mechanics have experience with. For the most part, it is common parts. It's readily available. And we do look to purchase those by piggybacking off of other contracts, whether it's Washington State or anywhere across the country. So we're looking for efficiencies there, especially as we get into that.
And Mayor, as you and I talked in committee, there's only 2 manufacturers in the United States that you could buy America with. So prior to COVID, there were 6 manufacturers, and they went out of business, 4 of them. So there's only 2. So I want you to think about all of the transit properties across the United States. So it's a 24 to 36 month waiting period in line to order buses. And we're also competing with all of the LA games that's going to take place in 2028. They want all of the buses to be zero emissions for the LA games. So all of the battery electric buses are being purchased to go directly to LA, and the president's going to get involved to talk to all of the transit agencies with electric buses to send them. He's going to mandate, if we're getting federal dollars, those buses are going to be sent to LA for that specific event that's coming up. So it's going to be really tight, and one of the things why we want to get to a selection is so that we can get in line to procure vehicles.
And I'll take one last one, and because I need another bus joke to fill out my grid. Get on the bus with Juan Carlos about the Multnomah versus Washington County service density, right? You don't have to be an engineer or rocket scientist. I held it up to one of my young scouts and said, can you tell the difference between the service in Multnomah County and the service in Washington County? And they said, they have a lot more service, because look at all the lines. Right? You could go a few blocks, there's another bus line. You go a few blocks, there's another bus line. So I think part of looking at the long-term plan that Juan Carlos was asking for is us understanding that capital improvement project list that says these buses will last to this time. This is what we're going to do with the Merlo station or an additional station, or maybe that extra property in Cornelius that we're not using for a Metro transfer station, we use for a new bus station. Metro might make a good deal on that property. But I think that's one of those things. You're just going to ignore me on that, aren't you? Going to let that go?
No, I'm happy to report that in our budget, we're actually budgeting with our general fund transfer station for the community.
I know, it's good.
Thrilled about that.
Yeah. But I think that's one of the things we need to look at and be honest about, right? Because as we talked about at JPACT and looked at those, we can see tens of millions of dollars being spent and forecasted through the transportation projects for Multnomah County. But I think we need to see some of that love come west and understand how that's going to work, right? Nobody's got the $300 or $350 million to turn a switch and fix the Merlot so that we could be battery electric, even if it was a good option. But how do we get there, right? And how do we increase the density of service and continue to increase the density of service, because we only have a couple of ways to go north-south. Everybody that talked today rode east-west. Nobody talked about riding north-south, because there's like a handful of them that go north-south, right? And usually it's kind of like from the west, north for a little while, and then maybe a little east again, that kind of stuff. So I think that's where we got to look at this, because we're focused on TV Highway, but it's part of the whole system, right? If I can't get north-south, even in the grid, how do I facilitate a change in direction? So, okay, I exhausted my list. Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the conversation. And I heard Councilor Gonzalez talk about a concrete plan, and I think that's the thing that we've got to put in front of you for the future. Also, over the past 2 months, I know that I've heard from many of you about the disappointment and the confusion that some of you feel as a result of the information that we're providing. And I understand, absolutely understand why you are disappointed here. But today, I think it's really important for me to hear from you as we move forward with this. I will say that I met with Councilor Salgado, and he had talked about making a request to City of Portland to use some of the PSEF money to buy vehicles for the future. I beat him to his conversation. I've already met with the mayor, Mayor Wilson, and said that one of the things that you could do is our 1,000-bus fleet, you could make it all zero emissions, and we could use PSEF money there. So he goes, Sam, don't jump too ahead of the game, but it's something that I think they're going to consider taking a look at and moving in that direction. I would like to ask the committee, I feel that we are all aligned on our goals, our purpose, and the need for this project, and improving safety is the priority that we've talked about for our riders and delivering the most reliable transit for those who depend on our service, and really creating that comfort and a dignified waiting experience for people traveling along TV Highway for work, school appointments, and other daily needs. So with that in mind, I want to direct staff and the project team to advance the TV Highway project using the 40-foot R99 buses. And I want to just tell you that I'm very confident that we could achieve our shared project goals regardless of the size of the propulsion of the vehicle in use on opening day. At the same time, I want to just say to you that this decision does not close the door for future opportunities as we move forward. With the 60-foot bus in mind, for us to upgrade Merlot and to look at ridership moving in the future. So as the corridor grows and travel patterns evolve, we want to continue evaluating what additional improvements may be needed to meet the needs of the community over time. So I just want to say thank you. This was good for me to hear, and want to just thank staff as well for this thoughtful consideration, and I look forward to continuing to meet moments like this together and collaborate to provide safe, high-quality service to your communities long into the future. So I want to move forward now and bring Michael up to walk us through the project schedule and an open discussion about funding for this project. And as you've heard many times, it's going to take advocacy and partnership from all of us to bring this project to completion. So thank you all for your investments from your jurisdictions that you've already made to really help move this project through the design phase. But we are still facing, we talked about the $50 million. We're facing a significant funding gap to bring the project through construction and to opening day. So our goal today really is to put those challenges on the table and really begin strategizing together about how we close the funding gap and move this project forward to success. So, Michael, I'm going to give you the floor.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it. Thank you all. I know we're running short on time, so this is a hugely important subject. You can advance the slide, please. The design is one piece, but the schedule and the cost or the budget and funding, they are so linked, and they also are huge predictors of our success. We have here the project schedule. As we transition from planning into delivery, our approach changes a bit, because once we start delivery, every minute counts. And I know that seems to be it seems a little aggressive, because we're always trying to move the schedule, move decision-making, hit our milestones, and be ready for funding and delivery. But we start putting many things in motion at the same time, and this team is really committed to helping to ensure that all of that stays in line. They are committed to a successful project, even when we have to sit here and say, this is tough work. But we all know the state that we're in as a country, as a state, and we're trying to do our very best. Some key things to note with this schedule. So the team recently wrapped up 15% design. They are working on finalizing the cost estimate. There'll be future information on that. I'll give a little update here. Our Metro partners kick into higher gear from 15 to 30, all through 30% to work on our environmental permitting. That takes an immense amount of time and effort, and we want to be ready by the end of 30% to have that NEPA concurrence from the federal government. By next summer, we are looking to be going through a readiness review with the federal government. We're looking to be in a position where we're asking for funding for FY28. And there's a lot of effort that goes just to get us to that point. Once we get to construction, we have the scope defined, we have the budget defined, we're rolling, we're managing risk, but the front end stuff is really challenging. Even between now and August, we're looking to get our rating submitted, which also is a determining factor of our success. So we want to hit a medium to a medium high rating. That helps us compete against other projects that are also going for funding. So as we talk about cost, we always need to be talking about project schedule as well. Delay is huge because we've estimated a project based off of some base assumptions, and I'll get into those on the next slide. As that date moves out, as we slip in the schedule, things get more expensive. Escalation occurs. Right now, I think for this project, every year of delay is 15 or 12 to 20 million. So absolutely, this team is trying to be on top of everything, even when it feels like they're pushing you all to make decisions faster than you may feel comfortable with. As you know, our target is to be open on this project by summer, fall of 2030, with about 2.5 years for construction. So a lot of front-end work here. Next slide. At a high level, you all have seen this. We have these two phases. Project development really is all of design. As you know, the funding for that has been secured. Even if there are overages, we're not coming back asking for more money on project development. We are moving forward. Construction is really what we're focused on securing now. So according to this, TriMet has committed $31 million for construction. We have Metro RUFA funds for $28 million essentially secured. Thank you, Metro. We have a placeholder of $14 million for Washington County and cities. And then we have an expectation for the federal government for $150 million. That all goes towards a project that is around $300 million. That's something that we decided during the planning phase. That was our target. It's not essential, but that gets us the max match from the federal government, which is $150 million. We call it the 50% off coupon. But we don't have to hit that. We want a project. We want to deliver infrastructure that is transformational for the future of these communities. If we don't hit $300 million, we're okay with that. We want the project. We want the generational improvement for this region. We do, as Sam mentioned, have a funding gap. There were assumptions that we had with the legislative ask that didn't come through. Our current gap is $56 million, and the team is working very hard, but they can't do it alone. They need everyone to help us get there, and I know that can be really challenging when you also are strapped. So we are definitely in this together, and we want to be transparent, which is why we're sharing this today. Can you go to the next slide, please? So to give you a sense of where we are today, we estimate out to year of expenditure. It's more complex than just saying 2030. When we do certain types of work is calculated in. When we purchase the vehicles, we calculate that in. But if we start to slip, those costs go up. We are assuming right now that we want an alignment that is capable of operating with a 60-foot vehicle. Buses are something that are, in some ways, consumables. We will replace these buses long before this infrastructure has met its useful life. So let's design it to the 60-foot. Let's design it for future growth. We're all on board. And as we're thinking about costs today, 15% is still preliminary. We carry a lot of contingency, almost 42% contingency at this point. That's also required by the federal government. As we move into 30 and 60%, we just get more and more refined. We're also working to mitigate risk, and we have the saying, ABC, always be closing. We want to be removing risks. We want to be narrowing decisions and dealing with smaller issues as we go forward. That's part of why we brought some of these really challenging decisions around propulsion and bus size to you today. It helps us move forward on the things that matter most. On our 50% preliminary range, again, we're still working out the total costs. The BEB scope, meaning when we include a 40-foot BEB, we have a cost that's trending between $345 and $355. We have a $56 million gap at around a $300 million project. Obviously, we have a bigger challenge to solve with BEBs. Assuming the 40-foot R99, we're in that 285 to 295 range. And we think we can do even better on that. So that's where we are now, kind of as a preliminary cost estimate. We're going to be refining that through May, and we'll have better numbers. Value engineering is something I'm going to talk about in the next slide, I believe. So if you could advance to that. And I'll talk a little bit about that because it gets a bad rap. As we think of this 56 million, there's a number of ways we get at it. We're trying to throw whatever we can out as early as we can. If we need to be at a full funding kind of level next summer, late next summer, that takes time. We need to be working that now, not hoping that it'll come later. So TriMet is pursuing on the grant side, and they're slim, to be honest. The FTA has cut back on one grant, the LONO grant, low or no emissions grant that A2nd got for, I think it was 39 million, is not really available anymore, and it's not available for diesel. They only have 21 million in it for the entire country. So some of these grants are no longer available. We have bus and bus facilities that we're going for this year. Build grant would be next year, but it starts to get on the later end, so we're trying to do as much as we can up front so we have more flexibility. Other than that, we have these three areas. State legislative asks, we're still hopeful that something will come out of that, but to be honest, we know that the state has gone through a lot of cuts. And $50 million ask a year ago is not going to be the same when we come to the table next year. So we don't have a designated amount for that, but we don't think it's something we can heavily rely on. Partner contributions, yes, that will be a factor too. You know, how much of a priority this project is will make a difference. And if there's any potential to bring additional funding from our partner groups, getting creative, we are going to need that help. And then there's the value engineering piece. That is something the team's about to get into. It's also a process that we follow with the federal government. And value engineering, a lot of people look at as just slashing scope, slashing costs. For us, it is looking at, and Mayor, I'm sure you can appreciate this as an engineer, how can we do the same thing, get the same outcomes, but more efficiently or more effectively or economically? That is a phase that we're going to be, an exercise that we hit several times during the project. We are going to start later this month, late May into June, to really look at what things could we change or engineer out so that we get the same result. The community sees the same thing on the street, but we do it more efficiently. You know, that will be a lot of work with ODOT as well. What design work do we need for these streets that are absolutely crucial, and what things can work for now for the project, and maybe some of these other expansions of intersections or the roadway can happen down the road. But we'll be unpacking as much as we can through that process, and then using the design process to really suss out whether they're viable. Can you go to the next one? Timeline-wise, I know we showed the schedule, but what's coming up pretty critically for us is the rating. And again, the rating is what establishes our competitiveness. We have to have a certain amount of funds committed. That ties directly into our, whether we get a medium or a medium high. 20 million is the minimum. I believe we have that. We might even have, I believe, 50 just through TriMet's commitment and through the RUFA funding that we've secured. It has to be that local piece. But that is our next step, and I know that with the federal government, we are rushing to that to get the rating. And then the following summer, in 2027, when we get to that grant agreement, the FTA assigns a project management oversight consultant, which is there to represent the federal government and ensure that we have the team, we have managed the risk, we have the funds in place, that this is a good investment for the federal government. And we absolutely need to be ready for that. That's something that 82nd is entering into, like this Friday, is when their PMOC comes on board, and they are looking for any gaps in how we deliver it, from the risk to the funding to agreements. I mean, you might hear the team kind of hounding for agreements coming up, for committing funds. That's part of it as well. Also getting other terms that the federal government looks at. This team has actually done a great job with the agreements as an all hands on deck, and with you partners as well. So we're a little bit further ahead than I know 82nd was. So I appreciate that, because it was take a while. But that is another piece that we'll really be focusing on. You'll hear us talking about. Again, in 2028, we hope to receive that Small Starts Grant Agreement, the SSGA, probably in the spring, so that we can start into construction and hit that 2030 target. It is challenging. This team is 100% committed to getting us there with your help. I know when we come to you as a policy and budget, it's not always the greatest news, but this is why we're here. If we had no risk or challenges, we would meet less frequently. And I know that there's been, you see the team, which is a team of, I'll say, internally, 6 folks. We have not even. And we have our Metro partners, and then we have the folks from your staff. We also have internally, we have Alan Lato's group in planning. They are very much involved understanding these numbers. Does Merlot work? Does Merlot not work? We have an entire project delivery group just for buildings, and their consultants working on Merlot, looking at analyzing it. No one's trying to push it one way or the other. We're trying to get facts from professionals in the industry to inform our decision, inform the executive team's decision. So while you may only see a small group of individuals on the team, there is a whole body of people internally working to make this happen, including our grants team, including our legal team, and finance, to find ways to move this project forward. And I know you don't always see that, but I think it's worth noting the immense effort that goes in to creating a successful project. We all want to win. I think that is the last slide for me. I'm open to questions in the last
let's open
7
it
to
up.
10 minutes.
Any
Back
questions?
to Sam, sorry.
Yeah, can we go to slide 18 real quick? Can you just help me see if I'm understanding this table correctly? So the asterisk funding sources are guaranteed sources. We just don't know the amount. Is that what I'm understanding from this table?
It's an estimate at this point. So we don't have a firm amount for Washington County. We have a placeholder of $14 million. For FTA, if we pursue a $300 million project, we would get $150 million. If we do something that is less, let's say we're trying to reduce the gap through value engineering, they will match, their match will be less as well.
Okay, and so the root of my question is it sounds like there's still a process that has to take place for them to decide if this project is going to get funded or not. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so the asterisks, because I'm getting confused here, because when it's explained that way, I understand that the money's not guaranteed, right?
That is correct.
And so you're putting it on the table like it is guaranteed. So it's causing a little bit of confusion. So that's what I'm trying to get to the root of, is that part of the funding gap? Is that 150 million, or is it just the 56 million? Because if it's not guaranteed, I'm having trouble understanding why we're counting it as guaranteed.
We're not counting it as guaranteed. This is how the New Start or the Small Starts CIG process works. You work with the government, the feds, FTA, to establish a viable project. It is a hard business model, right? Because you don't find out if you're successful until you've gone through those years of design. But it's a model that many transit agencies use across the country. It's one that TriMet has been hugely successful. It's paid for all of our major light rail and bus investments. So,
okay, then can you remind me the timeline again of when you initiate that and when it gets completed?
So next summer is when the feds basically send their representative and their PMOC to say, okay, are you managing your risks? Do you have scope that's within your budget? Do you have funding that matches your budget? Do you have agreements, third-party agreements that commit those funds? All of that, we're working today to get towards that point, but all of that will need to be in place by next summer. That's when they do their readiness review, and they say, are you ready or are you not? If you have a risk that you haven't managed, they could also apply more contingency to cover the risk that they see, which could just creates other problems, right? So.
Okay. So the application starts in the summer. It doesn't complete in the summer.
It starts and is submitted within that summer.
Okay. And then how long do they take to get back to you?
And then I'll say 5 months. But even that is variable. We're going off of past models with the current administration. They have not yet awarded those that submitted for their grant in the fall of last year. They have yet to award those. So it slides a little bit. And I think 82nd will be a good a test to see what happens with that funding. But this is the model you kind of have to follow. You have to put the money in. You have to put skin in the game into the game before you are deemed ready for delivery. And it's a hard process to follow.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Can you go to the next slide also? I think there was one with the timeline, the one after this. Yeah. And so, I'm new to this seat, right? I just got appointed to the city council last year, but one of the things that stood out to me originally about this project is just the length of it, how long it takes. And I come to understand that that's just part of the process. And that's just something that we have to manage and deal with. But one of the things that I was kind of, as I was assessing whether I wanted to kind of dive into this work and volunteer for it is, what does the project look like? And so the 60-foot buses and, the change of the scenery in that area was a big draw for me supporting and being with this project. Now that that's not on the table and things are switching up a little bit, I'm starting to ask myself, what's going to happen a year from now, right? The next summer when you submit that application, is it possible that we have to come back here and say, okay, well, look at the new timeline. Is it now 2032, 2034? And so, it just, with that uncertainty and honestly, the lack of information and data that I have around ridership, that's one question that I've had since the beginning is where's the ridership data? And, it gets promised, and maybe I drop the ball and I need to follow up more often, but, I feel like I've asked for it now several times because I think that helps me understand, what the future looks like, because we're making a decision around the buses, and I don't want to make the huge deal about it, but again, we're making an investment that's going to last for a long time, and I don't know what the calculations are on growth, right? Are we going to see a growth in ridership? How do we know? How do we not know? Because if we're making a decision to invest on buses that are 40-foot buses, but the growth says that we need 60-foot buses, that's one of the reasons why I would like to see the ridership data, right? Because that would help me make a decision and inform my fellow councilors and transportation committee on whether we want to keep moving forward with this or not, right? And I think that's all helpful information that will help us come to that decision. So that's the final thing I'll say on that. Thank you again for the presentation.
When can we get them the ridership data? Well, actually, everyone on the committee.
So I don't think, I'll just say right now, the ridership piece is definitely an art, not a science. Like trying to predict exactly what the ridership will be is tough. We are doing modeling. I don't know that STOPS modeling has that projection fully determined at this point, but when do you think we could get that?
I think for Metro leading the NEPA process, so that's kind of one of the things that's folded into the part of the project that they lead, is doing the ridership projections and the modeling, and also the travel time savings and things like that. And that's really just been kicked off in, say, March.
Yeah, I thought I saw a couple of slides where you referenced ridership data, so that's why I assumed that there was ridership data. So is that just something that we're saying and we don't have the data?
No, we do have, that's TriMet internal data from TAPS.
Okay.
And things like that.
And so
and anything anecdotal that's coming from an operator, but it's mostly about actual, purchases of a ride or a trip.
Okay.
We have all kinds of ways of looking at that data, but, maybe, Alan? do you-
What's the disconnect here? I'm hearing we have the data, we don't have the data. I've been waiting for the data. What's the disconnect here?
Two slides.
I feel like this committee in the last iteration, we've gone through the data a bunch of times. I think your staff at the City of Hillsborough also has it as well. So I'm sure that through the Metro team, TriMet, we would love to get the data. But just as someone that's worked on this project for 7 years of my life, so I agree these things take really long. I think the underlying data is very compelling, which is why Metro put $28 million and the region has invested in this project. So I hear that I want to make sure you get the data, but also the data is very compelling.
Yeah, I know, I trust you, but I got to verify, right?
No, of
I've been
course.
asking for it, and if we did present it here and I missed it, that's my bad. I think it's okay that I'm asking for it, and if we have it, it should be really easy to share, right?
And I'll say we can share, I guess, high-level projections right now. 30% is when we have a lot of our traffic engineering and the work that Metro is doing with STOPS modeling, which is a federal model. Those both will give you true data that you can work more off of. But even then, it's a projection, but it's a more refined projection than what we have right now.
And Chair, I would chime in.
It's not a guarantee.
From the data that you shared with me, I think, set a meeting with these guys. When I wanted to look at rides and information about Cornelius when we were looking at the stops, set a meeting with these guys. Have them come out and meet with you, get on Zoom.
Yep.
Set a hard meeting. Say, I want to meet next week, 2 weeks. Let's go over the data that I have. And as far as the data I've reviewed, I think to what Juan Carlos is talking about, the most compelling to me as an engineer is the before and the after for division. Because that's actual data. That's not projections. It's not modeling. It's not wishing. What do we have for ridership on division? When we turned it to FX, how much did it increase? To me, that's the only real concrete data we have, and it shows a pretty substantial increase. I don't have the number off the top of my head. I think, to me, that would be the best data for you to look at from my perspective. That was the data I found the most compelling.
Yeah, it's all good. I mean, whatever data it is, as long as it's in my inbox, that's all I'm really focused on, and this is like I said, third time I've asked our city staff, I've asked TriMet, I've asked this committee before, so I'm not trying to be conflictive. I'm just trying to have access to the data, the same information that everybody else has, right? So you're making these compelling arguments. I want to see that. So,
Councilor,
thank you.
we will be.
We'll get you.
You don't need to schedule. We'll take care of that. Yep. Councilor Hartmeyer, Bragg.
No, that's okay. I think Councilor Gonzalez and Mayor Dillon covered it.
Okay. Any other questions for Michael or Josh? Okay, thank you, guys.
Sam, I'll say something real quick. I appreciate the presentation, and I'm going to say this, and Chris, a lot of love for you. I mean, this is ODOT's road, right? And the fact that we have a funding plan that almost brings $250 million of non-state money to frankly fix their road, I mean, I think that money needs to come from the state and from ODOT. I know Chris, if he had it, he would love to give it to us. But it's tough because this May, I mean, we have a transportation investment measure on the ballot to raise the gas tax. I know it's very controversial and very hard for voters, but I'm voting yes on that because if we pass that, ODOT would probably have the money to invest in this project. So I think it's important to connect those things together. I doubt that my endorsement will be compelling for people. But the governor has assembled a, task force they announced, I think today or a few days ago, around 2027 transportation. Grace Kraniken, a former ODOT director, lives in Washington County, 3 blocks from TV Highway. I plan to, talk to her every single week and remind her about how important this project is, and as well as the governor. So I know that 2027 is going to be a very important, and in some ways, it's not just TriMet and ODOT, but is every single project partner from Hillsborough to Cornelius to Washington County to Metro, are we willing to go to the governor and say, this is our top priority? That is a hard thing to say. That is a hard thing to say because we all have a bunch of needs in a bunch of areas. And if we can't all say yes to that, then it starts to be harder and harder. So I'm going to work really hard with y'all to make the case to hopefully we get to buy in. But that is what it's going to take for us in 2027 to unlock $50 million. Like you said, it's going to be very hard. But it's a life-changing amount of money. But at the same time, it's ODOT's road, and they need to fix it. And I think they know that. So we need to speak with one voice. Anyway, just wanted to wrap up there.
Thank you, Councilor. Chris?
Yeah, actually, I super appreciate those comments, and thank you, Councilor Gonzalez. Yeah, it is an ODOT facility. We're big supporters of this project. This is a facility that's heavily used. Facility, I'm referring, of course, to TV Highway, Highway 8, OR 8, however you want to term it. It goes through a lot of communities. It goes through a lot of cities. It's a freight route. It's an everyday route. People walk it. People bike it. People also just try to live their everyday life, including on transit on it. And they're also trying to get to jobs. And so it's a really substantial facility that there isn't a great alternative for. And then you also have other just physical challenges, like there's a freight rail that's been there for years. And so we're really appreciative. It's incredible. I was looking this up, just in the last 10 years, ODOT's put $33 million. That's state money, city money. It's not just ours. There's another one, $42 million planned or underway. And what I would guess is, besides spots, most people would say, I didn't even notice because it's so long and it has so many needs. It has safety needs. It has operation needs. It has state of good repair needs. It needs to be safer for people to walk along. It needs to be safer for people to cross. It needs to be safer for people to drive along. It needs to be safer and work well. And yeah, so it's a great project. The most important thing is to make it happen, because everything will help. Probably a lot of you have, talked about the perfect being the enemy of the good, and there's so many needs that we're going to all be investing in this for decades because it's not a quick fix, and it's such a big, important road. So, well, that's true. I wish I could say that, yes, I do think that, supporting any kind of funding on transportation helps everything. I am a state employee, so I can't do any kind of advocacy, but I will just say that is money for operations and maintenance, I will say, and now it does end up having an effect on the overall system. If we had the money, we would do it, and we keep programming money in this. We're pretty hopeful that the 27 to 30 STIP, which is our funding mechanism, is going to have about $15 million, actually one of the biggest projects in the region, given our capital budget, coming up in order to invest on safe crossings and sidewalk infill, particularly in Eastern Cornelius, related to a road safety audit we did, in order to allow people in that urbanizing area to have safe access to transit and to move along, and then a few other investments throughout, including restrictions on right turns when there's lights, in order to make sure pedestrians can cross the road safely. And those investments are in Cornelius, Hillsborough, Beaverton, and Incorporated County. So But again, $15 million feels like not much. We're really committed to try to find funds in order to reduce the cost of the project to TriMet, knowing that we all need to do our part. But that said, there would probably still need to be money from the legislature, the type of money and the volume of money, and the strings that are and aren't attached. So all these need to be true and to move forward. So I know it's been a long meeting, and I just wanted to say thank you. We're a big part of this, and there's going to be some hard trade-offs. I'm really impressed by the work that TriMet's doing. You've got a lot to balance, and I'm sorry sometimes it probably doesn't feel like that everyone's feeling supportive, but I know how hard you work and all the things that you take into account to try to make good things happen. It's not easy.
Chris, thank you. Mayor?
Just a quick one. I felt I couldn't pass on this, and I've said it before, but I need to say it again. This plan is doing something that we've never had before. We have one unified plan from BTC to the Forest Grove turnaround. And when ODOT makes an investment, rapid flashing beacon, crossing, lights, it's towards this end. I feel that's one of the most powerful things we've had on this, is we have one unified plan, all those miles. And everything we do good. If the city's looking at a stop, we're not, if it's not the ones that we've agreed to, tough, they're off the list. We're not spending money on them. But if we get an Eagle Scout that wants to come in and build a bus shelter, we know where we're directing them, right? This is something that we've never had before, and I think it's the most powerful part of this project is the agreement across all these jurisdictions to come up with one plan, and we will keep chewing at it. And we will go to the well together to hit the state up for the 56 million, but without it, we will continue to move forward. Without the 150 million from the feds, we will continue to move forward because we have one plan that we all agree to that gets us from BTC to the Forest Grove turnaround, where all the stops are and what safety improvement needs to be done and what is the right answer. So that, to me, that's the song I hear playing in my head every time I think about this project, that even if we were driving the same old buses we are today, we'll have a better experience at the shelters. We know where we want to go, and we've never had that before. So thank you.
Mayor, what a great closing statement. Really appreciate that. Thank you all for your participation and your feedback. Our staff must continue to work together to identify the funding options as we talked about, and we'll continue our collaboration as we move through design. What I do want to just note, this summer, Team TriMet will be hard at work pulling together the CIG ratings packet, and you'll be seeing Nick and the community affairs team out in all of your communities to provide project updates and the continued outreach. And then we're going to meet again as a committee in the fall at the 30% design milestone. So enjoy the summer, and just know that I'm a phone call away if you need me. Council, you'll have your information. I guarantee you that. So thank you. Have a great evening.